Hey y'all, welcome back to Gather Online. It's Tuesday and the sun is out. I don't know how long, but get outside, sit on your porch or your patio or your balcony, anything that you have, or stick your head out a window if you have one of those, and watch this video of Luke and Olivia telling us a little bit about their Sabbath day. Y'all enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of week 2 of Gather Online. I like that name. Glad we have a name now. I'm here today with my friend Beth Moore, and Beth is what you might call my special friend. So, no, this is my... I got us off track. Okay. This is my wife, Olivia, and really glad she could join us today. We're hoping to talk to you about something that's been a great blessing to us in our lives, and we want to be a great blessing for you too. I saw a blog title, didn't read the blog, but I saw a blog title not too long ago, and the title was "Don't Waste Your Quarantine." And I thought that was a good idea. I don't know what the article said, but that's a good idea. Don't waste your quarantine. There's a lot we can be doing during this quarantine, maybe providing some opportunities for us that we haven't had before, or at least some space to think about some things that we need to be thinking about. So we hope to give you some things to think about and to possibly practice during your quarantine. Let me just start by saying that everybody's life has rhythms to it. These rhythms are just consistent, repeated patterns that are moving our life forward. Just like a song has a beat to it, so our lives have a rhythm to it. Olivia says that I don't have rhythm, but that's because she just has a different kind of rhythm, and I always tell her that we shouldn't judge each other's rhythm. I get tired of people judging my rhythm. Different's not wrong. Anyway, we have rhythms to life. Some of these rhythms, some of these repeated patterns of behavior, they're less significant than others. You know, brushing your teeth every morning is significant for your health and your hygiene, but it's not really forming you as a person. Driving to work is a rhythm of life, doesn't really form you as a person. But others, they're weighted rhythms. They're things that really matter and that impact who we are becoming. If you're watching 2 hours of cable news every evening, that's a formative rhythm in your life. And as Christians, we need an alternative set of rhythms, a different beat to our life that reflects the different narrative, the different story we are living out. Because we don't have the same story that the world has. We don't have a secular story. We're living out a narrative that starts in the Old Testament with God choosing a people and goes all the way up through the New Testament with Jesus Christ and the church. And that should be reflected in the repeated patterns of our lives. So one of those rhythms we want to talk to you about today is keeping of the Sabbath. I mentioned this on during the town hall we had where we were kind of introducing ourselves, that my family and I, we keep the Sabbath. And since that time I've had a few people express interest in just asking questions or expressing interest in having further discussion about this idea. So we wanted to put some things out there for you to think about. And then next week we're going to come back and maybe talk about this a little bit more, but we want to give you some time to send us some questions. You can post them on Facebook if you want to. You can text us or email us. But if you have questions that you'd like for us to address after you listen to what we have to say about the Sabbath today, then please feel free to join in and that is that okay? You can edit that out too. So feel free to send us questions. So we're going to organize this around 3 questions today. Really, one of them is going to take up most of the time, but that is the what, the why, and the how of Sabbath keeping for Christians today, and just more so based upon our experiences. So you have anything you want to add right now?
No.
Okay.
I'm looking at the camera, but I'm listening to you.
Yeah, right, okay. So, on the Sabbath, here's what we do. Okay? We're not saying that you need to have a very, very boring day once a week so God will be pleased with you. I'm afraid that's what some people think when they hear about the Sabbath is, okay, so I can have God's favor so that I can say that I've done it. I will be bored all day long. It's not a legalism. It's not God trying to test you to see if you're willing to be bored for Him. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about basically three things. One is we don't do work. And this, of course, we're not getting into the scriptures right now. You could look at this, Exodus 20, I think maybe the first place where you have Sabbath instruction given in the Old Testament. Multiple places you could look at and read about this. If you want to check out Exodus 20, do that, and you can read there for a start. We're not doing that right now, but just based upon the Old Testament principles, we're talking about not doing any work. Now, what we need to specify is that work is different for different people. And some people's work is another person's refreshment. And we don't need to be rigid in how we apply these principles here. Do things that are not draining to you. Don't go out, don't carry what you've been working on, you've been stressed with, don't carry that home for Sabbath time. And the flip side of that is do things that are refreshing to you. So the first person I ever heard talk about this talked about how they eat on the Sabbath. He said, 6 days a week I eat to live, 1 day a week I live to eat. And on that day, the Sabbath, is a celebration of God's goodness in creation. Eat good food and truly thank God for it. Different things, varieties. Try things out, or get into a pattern of someplace you really like to go you don't usually go, or something you like to cook you don't usually cook, and enjoy that food on that day. Another thing we do is we play together. You may not have kids, we have kids at home, and so that's a time for us to play with them, to spend time with them. I read to my girls. One of the greatest blessings I've had spiritually in my life is finding good fiction to read to my girls. A lot of times by Christian authors like C.S. Lewis and George MacDonald and Tolkien. These books have been so spiritually beneficial to me. I would have never known it, but they blessed me so deeply, and I spend a lot of time on Sabbath reading to the girls. Things like that. You can play. We go for walks together as a family. Things like that that just are refreshing. And then also, one thing that I think is good to do on Sabbath, we're not as good at it as a family as we should be, especially since we do it on Saturday, but it's just worshiping together. So somewhere where we need to be learning to do that, I think, is spending time in the Word or in prayer together as a family. Do you want to add anything to that?
It's such a sweet time that feels like the Lord is present in it. So there are ways we worship that aren't pray and read at that moment. But that's true. Since we don't do it on Sunday, we don't have a corporately worshiping time. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, and this may be implied already, but it's we rest. Just resting your body and your mind is so important. How many people today are exhausted and under-rested? And I saw a survey in one book that nearly 30% of adults average less than 6 hours per night of sleep. And how many of those are 4 or 5? And that's just not healthy. It's not physically healthy, and it's not spiritually healthy. And Sabbath is a time where we can rest. Of course, it may remind us that we need to rest more throughout the week. So that's the what of the Sabbath. The why do we keep the Sabbath? That question can be answered from multiple angles. One angle is the biblical question. Why are we doing it? Let me answer it like this. Keeping the Sabbath is not biblical. And I realize that's a double negative that in essence says it is biblical, but it's helpful to qualify it that way because we're talking about different ways of being biblical. And what I mean when I say that the Sabbath is biblical, what I mean is that the Scriptures certainly allow it and recommend it even, I would say. But it's not a rule that the Scriptures say you have to do this. Certainly you have to do this way at this time. Not in the New Testament. The New Testament provides considerable freedom with regard to keeping the Sabbath. We can't get around that. It's pretty clear. Paul says, don't let anyone judge you regarding the Sabbath in Colossians 2. So there shouldn't be any judgment about doing this. And we wouldn't say it's a biblical rule. If you're looking for a rule or a law, say, no, we don't have that in the New Testament. We would have the opposite. We'd have the releasing of that rule, if anything. However, if we're talking not from a standpoint of law, but from a standpoint of wisdom, and the standpoint of being instructed from the whole of Scripture, not just from a part, then we can come up with some really good reasons for keeping the Sabbath. And if you just look back at the Old Testament and what happened there, what a gift this was to the people to be able to keep the Sabbath. Let me just read something to you. This is from Sandy Richter's book called The Epic of Eden. And it's a good book about the Old Testament, understanding the Old Testament. But I want you to hear the way she describes the original keeping of the Sabbath as a gift to the people. Can you imagine what the gift of the Sabbath meant to the Israelites standing at the foot of Mount Sinai? A few months prior, they had been slaves who had been born of slaves. Slaves whose only value was the quantity of labor they could produce before their backs gave way and their strength failed. Slaves who, outside of a holy day or two, worked every day of their lives, from the tenderest days of their childhood until their broken bodies were laid in the ground. And now this God, who has claimed them as his treasured possession, is announcing that one day out of every 7 will be set apart for rest. And just think about the gift that the Israelites received from God, being told they could rest. Not only they could rest, but they should rest, that it was required of them to rest. And God knows today that people need rest too. And it's very interesting what Jesus said in one of the controversies, because Jesus was violating the Sabbath, according to the rules at that time at least. He was violating the Sabbath, and his answer when he's challenged is, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. That means God made this day for us as a gift to us. And I don't think human nature has changed. I don't think human beings have changed so much that we can say, well, we no longer need anything like that. God recognized we needed patterns of rest that would really lead us into delight and delight in Him. So, I want to stop there and say that that's the biblical angle, but also we just want to talk personally about how we see this day as a benefit to us and a blessing to us. I'm going to let Olivia say something about that.
Okay. I just wanted to talk about it personally. Well, that's what you just said I would do, but that's what I do. Okay, so 2 things that the Sabbath has done in my life, and this touches on him too, but one of the things that it did was it changed me, and it still changes me. It is a discipline, and so I'll get to all the ways it blessed me, but it also just helped me stop things that I was doing that weren't really lovely. I can be kind of scattered. I can get my mind in projects and plans, and can be doing things a lot. And if I'm in a plan mode and then somebody interrupts me, I'm irritable about that. So the Sabbath stopped me when, like, early in marriage. I don't know if you'll remember, but like it was hard for me to leave dishes in the sink. It was hard for me not to keep cleaning up, like, in the evenings. And I know that he was wanting me to hang out, but it was hard for me to quit. Anybody who knows me now, I don't think they'll think that I'm real, particular about the house. But at one point I was, and so there are ways that the Sabbath stopped me in those things. If I know, like, I have to stop all the work, then kind of the to-do list that runs in my head, the plans that I was kind of thinking of, the projects, they all stop. And that's a real blessing to my mind, to my body, to be resting, and also to my fussing. I was asking our girls what they loved about the Sabbath, and they're little, so whatever, but one of our daughters said that she didn't have to do things. Like, what she means a lot is chores, and so we have to do a lot on Friday to, like, try to get the house kind of picked up. But on Saturdays, I can't see something on the floor and be like, come pick this thing up. I mean, I guess I don't talk like that, but like, Cindy, come here, put this thing off the floor. And I don't do that. Like, I stop myself from picking up things. I don't get everybody to do what I'm wanting them to do. And so that's a discipline for me that is very helpful, because once my mind can be still, then I can get to the blessings of the Sabbath. One thing I wanted to mention, especially in light of the coronavirus, is in ways it's a really long, it's not a Sabbath because we all have to do lots of things, but part of what the Sabbath does sometimes is it makes me stop enough that I can realize things that are really there, like, oh, I'm really kind of sad, or I'm frustrated, or something that if I stay busy I may not notice, and that can be a real gift. And I've noticed with the coronavirus, some days I'm doing great, but then sometimes I'm like, I'm so bored, and when I'm bored then I'm like, oh, a little bit sad about being bored. So some ways that stopping what might distract me, I can't just run and get an iced coffee every time, so it helps me to deal with what's really there. So anything that's good, a discipline, there'll be parts that are shaved off that are kind of hard, but the blessing of it has been wonderful. So like with the coronavirus, as a transition, like there's already beautiful stories. People have said, oh, me and my husband are spending this time together, and so anything that's kind of a discipline also is a gift. And so the Sabbath especially has been an incredible gift in our lives, mine personally. So I like to have fun, and I like to have joyful times, and sometimes that can be indulgence when it's just bad, but a lot of times I just want us to be together and be happy and have a good time together. And so what that used to be was I would long for vacations. I wanted to have things to look forward to. So when we were early married, this guy's not Mr. Fix-It. Y'all know. He's not going to be like out in the yard like doing a bunch of things, but there's always something that he can study. So when we were early married, he was in school, so he would have things to read. He can be really busy just thinking, sitting here thinking about things.
Olivia says I'm smart but practically useless. I think that's all. That's not right.
It's very true, but usefulness is there are different ways to be useful. So what it did for us was, once we did the Sabbath and we weren't doing work-ish things, then all of a sudden we were both present to each other. So what we would have normally had on a vacation where we didn't do work, we were both like hanging out, that became a Sabbath, and that happens every week for us. So me wanting something to look forward to where we're together and we're enjoying things, that has happened. Now it happens every week. So and that really comforted me deeply, just the looking forward to something that was sweet and good every week. So there's not yard work. Let me okay. And we do things that we enjoy together. I've learned over time, it doesn't happen every single Sabbath, but now I have something I call like the Sabbathy feeling. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm still enough and present enough to the moment where I realize how good my life is, how blessed I am in the Lord. Maybe I'll see nature, or maybe I'm actually looking at the girls and I see how sweet they are, or he's playing, and it's just this moment where I'm like, oh, God is so good right now. And I always hope I'll have that sense every week, like things are okay and good, and I'm so blessed. You know, it doesn't mean that all the worky things or everything's like solved, but I have the sense that God is caring for us, and that I'm so blessed in that. So I just want to talk a little bit about what it looks like and answer what could be objections. So I was thinking this morning just that when we talk about it, maybe that people's response may be, well, we can't do that. Like, we only have the weekend. We only have certain days. And I understand that our experience has been different. He's been a student and he's been a pastor. So he can mow the lawn Friday at 3 if he chooses to do it like that. And I know that lots of people have jobs that make it where all they have is the weekend. And so I know that that can be complicated. But I wanted just to say that you can practice it, and I wanted to share some examples of friends that we have. So as far as like oh, I have so much to do. We have friends who, he's a farmer, and he's like the busiest, most work-ish guy that I know. But they started practicing it, and they set aside a day, and it really changed their family. It blessed them so deeply. And so I know you can, even if you have a lot to do. One of the things I was going to talk about was kids. So kids make it a little bit complicated. It's not a day like a solitude day. Like, I'm not getting to do everything I might like to do to meet the Lord on the Sabbath, because we are a family, and so we always have the girls around. And so on the Sabbath, a lot of times he takes extra time, like he was talking about, reading with them. We watch cartoons. Let me just say this quickly. It starts on Friday, we get pizza, and it's pizza movie night, right? Saturday morning used to be donut day. Now we've changed it to cinnamon roll morning. But we have donuts, the girls watch cartoons, sometimes I sleep in. We go for a walk, then we go get some lunch. I don't cook on the Sabbath. That ain't fun for nobody. Anyway, and then I will do something in the evening. We kind of, Saturday nights, we transition back to normal life. That's just a quick, like, that's what we do for fun in our home. So then he'll take the girls and read to them, so that gives me a little bit more space than I would have on a normal day. But it is tricky to figure out what you might like to do with your kids and your family. The farming family that I talked about, they're all boys. They do like adventure, like they go hiking, and it looks different for their family than it does for ours. So with kids, and so one of the friends we have, he takes his son to breakfast every Saturday morning so his wife can sleep in. And there are lots of ways to do it that will bless you. And then I also want to talk about singles, because we're talking about families and being present to each other. But I think a lot of times that singles don't, okay, in my limited experience, but I got some friends, they may not be resting, just because they don't have people or children around. A lot of times they're busier than a lot of other people. And so the Sabbath is always also blessed. A friend of mine especially who's single, who she doesn't rest well, and her job is stressful. So even just to take a time where you rest, even if you're single and you're not trying to be present to your family, it's been important in her life. And so that was just, I wanted to encourage you can do it. And I was thinking today, like, it's not going to hurt you to try it. I mean, just if you try it and you think, man, that's hard, or you can't find the rhythms that bless you, but I bet that the Lord will meet you in sweet ways just in trying. So just wanted to say that encouragement to try it. Boom. That's
all right. Yes. Like anything else that is a spiritual discipline, a lot of times it requires intentionality and preparation, and you have to enter it with discipline before you experience the blessedness of it. So we would just really encourage you to set out and try, even if it may seem a little bit hard right now. Give it a try, and try it consistently for a little while and see if you don't find the Lord meeting you in it. So now, in conclusion, I'm going to ask Olivia to sing a song about the Sabbath, if you would. No, we can just close out. All right, send us questions if you have any you'd like for us to answer next week, or if not, we may just talk a little bit more about the Sabbath. Okay, guys, we'll see you soon.